Chapter 31. Thomas and Owens entered the J. Edgar Hoover building and walked through the large, impressive lobby. Their footsteps and other people's voices echoed within the great walls. As the elevator doors opened, Director Green stepped out. "Well, hello. How are things coming along?" he asked, in his normal, politically correct manner. Both agents looked at the director with guilty grins, as though they were hiding something. They didn't know what to say. With all the events that had happened recently, they wouldn't even trust their own mothers at that moment. Half expecting the director to pull out a gun and shoot them, Thomas answered, "Oh, it's coming, sir." They ran into the elevator and pushed the closed door button. Director Green shrugged his shoulders and continued on his way. Thomas and Owens remained quiet as the elevator rose to their floor. A glance between them acknowledged their fears as to what they'd discover in the records department. Once exiting the elevator, both headed to the computer lab to talk with Mickey. Mickey was alone in his large computer room. Hundreds of servers, terminals, and other equipment buzzed and blinked and hummed as Mickey busily hopped from one system to the other, typing on the keyboards and scratching his head. The room was huge, about the length of a football field, and brightly lit, with the air conditioner blasting out cold air. Both men pulled their jackets close as they entered the cold, noisy outer room. Mickey, on his roll-away chair, was darting from system to system, making sure the FBI's computers remained running without any glitches. A glass partition separated the agents from Mickey and his technological wonders. Thomas knocked on the glass, and Mickey looked up through his thick Coke bottle glasses that made his eyes look 20 times bigger than they actually were. He smiled at the two agents who were shivering in the cold. He nodded his head and approached the locked glass door. As he swiped his badge through the card device, the door popped open. He poked his head through the crack. "Hey guys, what's up?" "We need your help," Owens answered, shivering. "Can we come in?" "Well, it depends on what you want. I'm not really supposed to let you in here, you know that." "Come on, Mickey," Terry Owens said, now shaking uncontrollably. "Look, go to my office around the corner and I'll meet you over there." He closed the door and the two chilled agents headed for his office. "This is kind of stupid," Owens said as they walked down the hall. "It's all the same place, actually, just a different door." "Hey, if it makes him feel better," Thomas said as they entered his office. Mickey was already there, at his desk, punching on the keys to communicate with his computer. "Hey guys, what's up?" he asked as they entered. He never took his eyes off his computer screen. "As I said before," Owen stated, "we need your help." Mickey turned to face the two agents. "Okay, what do you need?" Thomas explained the recent events to Mickey. He started with the beatings of Joe and Stephen, then described the mysterious division at the Pentagon, the senator and the snake venom, and anything else he could think of that was important. He even explained how they felt their lives might be in danger. "So where do I come in?" Mickey asked. He was in his early 20s, with shoulder-length, oily, black, curly hair. He was a little over 5 feet tall and couldn't have weighed but 100 pounds, soaking wet. His black pants and white shirt were about 3 sizes too large, and his aged brown loafers had flattened from too many years of use. Judging by the large ink stain, the pens that filled his shirt pocket were probably empty, and his glasses were covered with a light, greasy film. Mickey was the typical computer nerd who spent all his waking time in front of a computer screen. "Agent Owens here needs to go through the computer files," Thomas began, "to see if there's anything on a specific company. I want to talk with you about computer gadgets and share what I have in this bag." He held up the aging brown paper bag with handles. "I thought your lunch was in there," Owen snickered, and Mickey laughed. "Why don't you just do this from your office?" Mickey asked with a puzzled look. "We don't want our moves traced," Thomas answered. "I see." Mickey thought for a moment. "I have a backup system that Agent Owens can use, but it's being used by a friend of yours at the moment. Come on. I'll help you out, but it'll cost you a lunch." "What friend?" Thomas asked. "Agent Snyder. Who else?" They followed Mickey through the cold computer room to a small windowless room in the far back corner. Agent Snyder was there, furiously surfing the FBI's internet for any information that would give him a clue as to why the senator was so unpopular. Agent Owens, you'll not be disturbed in here, Mickey said. You can search our entire FBI internet, but remember, you can't access the outside World Wide Web. It's the only way to protect us from hackers. If there's no way in, hackers can't hack. If you need to go outside the system, you'll have to go to another computer, he explained proudly. No problem. I just want to search our internal databases, Owens replied. Agent Snyder looked up at the two agents who had just interrupted him. Nothing, guys. Absolutely nothing. Thomas could see Snyder was starting to get a little agitated at not finding anything concrete. Why don't you go visit some of the senator's friends? Asked some leading questions. Good idea. Here, Terry, it's all yours. Snyder said goodbye and left to continue his investigation. Agent Owens took Snyder's place and began typing on the computer as Mickey and Thomas headed to the workroom, which was down the hall from the computer lab. I tear apart my systems in another room so I don't mess up my lab, Mickey said as he used his badge again to enter the locked room. It was dimly lit with rows of metal shelving filled of old computer parts. A workbench was on the right, lit with only a small lamp. To Thomas it resembled a computer's graveyard with shadows of dead terminals gathering dust and old servers that probably hadn't worked in years. Spare parts, Mickey said as he noticed Thomas studying the room. Now, what do you have in that old bag you're protecting? Thomas looked at the bag, then handed it to Mickey, who slowly pulled out a torn, bloody sweater. He held it up and tilted his head to get a better look. Oops, forgot that was in there. Thomas grabbed the sweater and hid it behind his back. Sorry. No problem, I get those all the time. They both laughed. Mickey pulled out the two recording devices and examined them. He placed each slowly on the table. Where did you get these? Under a couple of hospital beds. Are they ours? Yep. I know exactly who checked them out, too. In fact, they were checked out just a couple of days ago. Who? Thomas asked. John Green, Mickey answered matter-of-factly. Director John Green? Thomas shouted. My boss? That's the one. That fucker, Thomas replied, running his hands through his hair. Temper, temper, Mickey said while examining the devices. Thanks for my toys back, though. Here, you can have these. He removed the tapes and handed them to Thomas. Recommend you destroy these at home. Oh? I'll not log these in. In fact, I'll store these devices over here and let John explain how he lost them. Mickey tossed the two recorders on a top shelf in the back of the room. They'll gather dust up there along with the others. Thanks again, Mick. No problem. So, what does all this mean? I never liked that guy. He's always sneaking around. Not real sure. What else has our director checked out lately? Oh, a couple of bugging devices. I'll print you out a list. I thought something was up when he didn't have a charge number to associate them with an actual case. He said he'd get it to me in a couple of days. If he comes up with one, I'll let you know. I don't like it when people run off with my things without the proper paperwork. I get in trouble when the stuff disappears, and it comes out of my budget. I kind of figured I'd never see those recorders again. This is just terrific, just freaking terrific, Thomas exclaimed. Agent Terry Owens typed in the name Executives Incorporated in the search string of the FBI Internet. The new Internet linked every FBI server and gave instant access to millions of files, databases, and various types of records, the result of many long hours of operators scanning millions of documents and graphics, one at a time, into the huge electronic storage system. Unlike the regular Internet used by the general public, the FBI's Internet could only be accessed from inside the J. Edgar Hoover building and was great for searching through the information held by the FBI and other agencies, such as the CIA. A positive result from the terrorist attacks in New York City many years ago. The search engines were the same used by millions on the World Wide Web, and the little world icon turned eagerly in the upper right-hand corner, telling Owens it was busy searching for his information. After a couple of seconds, the system refreshed with over 1,000 hits. I just want to make a little note here. I wrote this a long time ago, and as all of you who are younger now, and maybe a lot of you that are older, may remember when we used to search for things, we had to wait for the search to finish searching, and then it would display everything on the screen. Nowadays our search is instantaneous, but it wasn't like that a long time ago. I forgot all about that, so I'll have to update this when we re-edit and reprint this book for another imprint. We'll have to update that. I can definitely tell a lot of the stuff that's going on in here is aged, but it's still a pretty cool story. So, all right, let's get back to the story. Most of the hits were useless, since everything with the word temp was included. "This is stupid," Owens yelled out loud. Then he remembered a little secret his girlfriend had told him about surfing the web. If he used quotation marks around a phrase, then only that phrase would pop up instead of each individual word. He retyped the company's name, but this time with the quotation marks. The computer refreshed, but this time with half the hits. "Bingo!" he yelled. The first hit was from a newspaper clipping that had been scanned and saved as an individual graphic file. Several other clippings also had the name Executemp Incorporated. The first one Owens pulled up was on the death of a TV evangelist, a Dr. David Emery King. "Hey, I remember this," he said. "Heart attack." He read the clipping, and the only mention of Executemp Incorporated was one small sentence that stated that the company had a temporary worker on site working for King before his death. Owens hit the print button, and the small inkjet printer sprang to life. Within minutes he was holding the newspaper clipping and a few associated reports. He pulled out his yellow highlighter and marked through the company's name. Then he hit the back button and chose the next document. It was another death, but this time at Ultratrans Corporation. "I think I'm going to be here a while," he thought, and wondered how far away the men's room was. Chapter 32. The broadcast was muffled over the airport's intercom, but Carrie knew it was announcing the boarding of her flight to Ohio. She put a few dollars on the counter, more than enough for the magazine, and hollered for the cashier to keep the change as she darted into the busy lobby. She was balancing her laptop in her shoulder bag and was concerned she'd be pulled aside and searched. But this time her luck held out. The man directly behind her was pulled, and the pretty lady in uniform scanned Carrie's ticket and smiled. She hurried down the long enclosed ramp, remembering how much she hated to fly. The engines roared as she moved through the small door and down the cramped aisle. The stewardess greeted her and welcomed her aboard. People were blocking the aisle as they stuffed large bags into the tiny overhead compartments. The sound of an air spraying above the passengers' heads muffled the stewardess's announcement. It was stuffy, and Carrie was ready to end her flight even before it began. Seat 43F. It should be a window seat, she thought, as she scooted down the aisle, maneuvering between the people blocking her way. As she approached row 43, she saw a friendly, familiar face. Dr. Thurston looked up at Carrie in surprise. They both said at the same time, "What are you doing here?" "Well, since you're here, give me a hand, will you?" Carrie asked, handing him her heavy shoulder bag. Thurston had the aisle seat, and she had the window seat, so he placed the shoulder bag on the empty seat between them. They settled in, and Carrie placed her laptop bag under the front seat, in front of her. As she clasped her safety belt, a heavy-set woman appeared in the aisle and announced that the middle seat was hers. "How would you like to have the window seat?" Carrie asked. The woman was rude and abrupt. "Don't like window seats? Mine is that middle one," she said, pointing to it. Thurston wondered how she'd fit without also sitting on him and Carrie. "How would you like the aisle seat, ma'am?" he asked very politely. "I guess you two must know each other and want to sit together," the woman said, still abrupt. "Yes, ma'am," Thurston answered. "Well, okay, as long as I don't have to sit next to no window. When I die, I don't want to see it coming. The good Lord can take me, but I don't want to know it's a-comin'." Thurston unbuckled his belt and hopped over one seat, which was hard to do with his long, thin legs. His computer had been tucked away in the overhead, so he had nothing but his book to move with him. As the three settled in, Thurston leaned over to Carrie and whispered, "I guess that when we go, you'll be the first to know." Carrie rolled her eyes and shook her head. She watched out the window as the plane slowly backed up. The stewardess was giving instructions on what to do if there was an emergency landing in the water, and Carrie wondered to herself how a large body of water could exist between Washington, D.C. and Ohio. She silently hoped that the pilot wouldn't overshoot Ohio and land in Lake Michigan. The plane slowly taxied down the runway, taking its place behind the other planes, and before Carrie knew it, she felt the force of the engines pushing her powerfully down the runway. Soon the feeling of weightlessness and her body being forced hard into the seat gave her stomach that queasy, uneasy feeling as the plane slowly rose into the air. "I hate this part," Carrie whispered to Thurston, and ducked down even deeper into her seat for more security. Thurston held her hand, and it felt good to Carrie to know she was not alone. Once airborne and on their way, she began to relax, and the two shared their ideas about the case. "So what are you going to check out?" she asked. "I'm going to visit a Walking Dead person." She raised her eyebrows. "Excuse me?" "Well, it's simple, really. I traced our Maxine Thornton to a graveyard. Seems she only lived a few weeks." "Oh, so I guess you want to see this ghost for yourself. Makes sense. I'm going to check out where the senator's moneys came from. Thought I'd better go to his home office. I found nothing in D.C. Absolutely nothing." "Sometimes, Carrie, nothing means something," Dr. Thurston suggested. "Why is it that everyone's talking in riddles these days?" She was getting tired of this game. "What I mean is that sometimes not finding anything is your answer. I'm sure if this guy didn't get his funds in a legal way, he wasn't going to advertise it. You'll find it hard to trace." The doctor picked up his book and began to read. Carrie watched the landscape pass by below, not sure where to start her search. The ride from Washington, D.C. to Columbus, Ohio only took a few hours, and the two were soon locating their luggage. Carrie suggested they stay in the same hotel that she and Thomas had used the last time they were there, and Thurston agreed. The two agents also decided to use one rental car and stay close together. The uncertainty of the case was giving everyone the jitters. Chapter 33. Agent Snyder stood in front of the country's Capitol building, feeling completely at loss. He did not know where to begin, or who to talk to first. He knew that if he walked boldly up to the other senators and began asking blunt questions, he'd be escorted out and possibly arrested. So he sat on the steps leading to the Capitol building and rested his chin in his hand. "Think," he told himself, "think." As he sat there, feeling completely useless, a little boy of about 3 or 4 walked courageously up to him and peered directly into his eyes. Unable to resist, Agent Snyder looked back and smiled. "Hello, mister," the little tyke said. "You look washed. I got washed one time." "And what did you do?" the FBI agent asked. "I ate it for my mum to find me, and she did. Maybe you mum find you too." The little boy was so sincere. Snyder looked around but didn't see any adults who seemed to be missing a young child, so he thought he'd entertain the boy until someone showed up. "Where's your mommy now?" Snyder asked. "Don't know." The little boy continued to gaze directly into Snyder's eyes. "So, if you thought your government was corrupt, where would you start looking?" Snyder knew he wouldn't get an answer, but thought, what the heck? There was no one else to talk to at the moment. The little boy looked around, then pointed to the large Capitol building behind Snyder. "Up those stairs are all the answers." "You know, I bet you're right. But what do I ask?" "You ask why?" the little boy replied. From across the lawn, a young woman in her 20s was frantically running toward Snyder and the little boy. "Tommy, I told you to stay close to me," she yelled. She stopped in front of them, catching her breath. "I'm so sorry if he's bothering you." "London?" Snyder asked, recognizing her accent. "Oxford. Vacation. He takes off at the slightest chance." She grabbed the little arm and gave the boy a mean glare. "He's a pretty smart little guy," Agent Snyder said, standing up. "Too smart. Thanks again, sir." The woman turned to walk away with a tight grip around the little arm. "Remember, misser, up there!" And the boy was dragged away by his mum with his finger still pointing to the Capitol building. "Thanks," Snyder said, more to himself than to the little boy, who was now out of hearing range. He turned toward the Capitol's dome and addressed it. "I hope you have the answers I'm searching for." He climbed the stairs. Chapter 34. Agent Owens had close to 50 pages of information and had just about exhausted all the resources from the FBI's computer when Thomas and Mickey entered the small room. "Are you about finished, or do you need more time?" Thomas asked. "I'm done for now," Owens answered. "I hope so," Mickey said. "Is there any ink left?" Owens smiled. "Sorry." "Oh, that's okay. Lasers are cheap. I hope you found what you were looking for." "Me too." Owens looked at Thomas and said, "Let's get back to the office. I want to spread all this stuff out." "Guess we're done, Mickey," Thomas said. As they turned to leave, he added, "Thanks for the toys. I'll keep you informed." As the two agents left the building and headed for their car, Owens wanted to know about the new toys. "He gave me this great little gadget. Look." Thomas pulled a small square box from his brown hospital bag. "I give up. What is it?" "It beeps when it senses a bug," Thomas stated. "I presume we're not talking insects here." "That's right. It takes regular batteries, and we just have to remember to keep it turned on. Now we'll know if it's safe to talk. I have one for each of us. Pretty cool, huh? Here, you can have this one." He handed the small box, the size of an old-fashioned portable radio, to Owens. "Thanks. Just what I've always wanted." "What do we do when it beeps?" I don't know. Quit talking?" "Okay." The two agents continued to walk to their car, not knowing what they would do the first time the small box